Miss Lark, I don't think I'm smart enough. I've tried and tried, and the numbers just won't stay still in my head." The boy said it without self-pity, which somehow made it worse. He was 4 years old, sitting at the small reading table in room 7 of Pinewood Primary, his feet not quite reaching the floor, a worksheet in front of him that he had erased so many times the paper had gone soft and thin in the middle. His name was Beckett Vane, and he had the most serious eyes Lark Calloway had ever seen on a child his age. Dark, steady, watchful eyes that seemed to be perpetually working something out. Lark was 25. She lived with her parents in a small house on Fenwick Road, where her mother grew tomatoes in the backyard, and her father fixed things on weekends with the quiet satisfaction of a man who believed that broken things deserved patience rather than replacement. She had been teaching for 2 years, and she earned the salary that early childhood education pays in a country that does not yet fully understand what early childhood education costs the people who choose it. She drove a car with a heater that worked only on the passenger side. She brought her lunch every day in a container her mother had packed since Lark was 7 years old and had simply never stopped. She looked at Beckett's erased worksheet. She looked at his serious eyes. "Beckett," she said, pulling her chair around to sit beside him rather than across, "can I tell you something true?" He nodded. "Smart isn't something you are or you aren't," she said. "Smart is something that grows. Like your tomatoes at home, do they come up the first day you plant the seed?" He considered this with the gravity of a small scientist. "No, you have to water them." "That's all we're doing," she said. "We're watering." He looked at the worksheet, then he picked up his pencil. She stayed that evening until 5:45, then again the following Tuesday, and the Tuesday after that. She told the front office she was doing voluntary enrichment sessions, no extra pay, no formal record. She simply stayed because Beckett Vane had told her the numbers wouldn't stay still in his head, and she had decided that was a problem worth solving on her own time. What she did not know was that on the third Tuesday, a dark-colored SUV had pulled into the far end of the school parking lot at 4:15 and had not moved. Beckett's father was Griffin Vane, 33 years old. He ran Vane Capital Partners out of an office in the financial district, a firm he had built in 7 years from a 2-person operation into something that employed over 200 people and managed assets that required a significant number of zeros to write down. He was the kind of man other men called driven. He was the kind of man who arrived first and left last, who returned calls within the hour, who had not taken a vacation since his wife Sloane had died 18 months ago from an illness that had moved faster than anyone had prepared for. He was raising Beckett alone. He had a kind and capable housekeeper named Mrs. Orville who handled mornings, and he arranged his schedule to always be home by 6:30, which in his world was an enormous concession, and in any reasonable world was simply a father trying. He worried about Beckett the way parents worry when they cannot fix what is hurting their child, constantly, quietly, with a helplessness that had no outlet. He had come to pick Beckett up himself that Tuesday because Mrs. Orville had a family appointment. He had arrived at 4:10, seen the light on room 7, and pulled into the parking lot to wait. Through the large classroom window, he could see his son at a small table and a young woman beside him, not across, but beside, pointing at something on a page. He could not hear them, but he watched his son's face. He watched Beckett erase something, try again, look up at the woman, and then, slowly, cautiously, begin to smile. Griffin Vane sat in that parking lot for 31 minutes and did not start the car.
He had seen Beckett's teacher at the parent intake meeting in September, briefly in passing, a young woman with a calm and attentive manner who had shaken his hand and said she was looking forward to getting to know Beckett. He had thought nothing particular of it. He had been in survival mode since Sloane died, and survival mode has a way of flattening the periphery. But watching through that window, he felt something he had not felt in a long time, the specific and clarifying gratitude of seeing someone love your child when you cannot be in the room. He did not go in that evening. He did not want to interrupt. He waited until Beckett came out with his backpack on, and on the drive home his son said, unprompted, "Miss Lark says smart is like a tomato. You have to water it." Griffin kept his eyes on the road and said, "That's a good way to think about it." And he made a note to himself that he needed to properly thank this teacher. He came to the school the following morning. He had planned a brief professional expression of appreciation. He was good at those. He found Lark in her classroom before the children arrived, watering the small plant on the windowsill. She turned when she heard the door and smiled in the easy, unguarded way of someone who had nothing to perform. "Mr. Vane," she said, "Beckett's doing really well. He got 4 out of 6 right yesterday." "I heard about the tomatoes," he said. She laughed, just briefly, and it was a real laugh, not a professional one. "I wanted to thank you," he said, "for staying late. I didn't know until recently that you've been doing it consistently." "It's not a hardship," she said simply. "He's working so hard. It would feel wrong to leave that unmet." He looked at her for a moment. "You're not paid for the extra time." "No," she said. "Then why—" "Because she told me the numbers wouldn't stay still," she said, and I could see that it was costing him something to admit that. Kids that age who ask for help are doing something very brave. It seemed important to show up for that. Griffin was quiet for a moment. In his world, everything had a calculation underneath it. He was not cynical. He was simply accustomed to understanding the logic of why people did things. He stood in this small classroom with its alphabet border and its watered plant and its soft erased worksheets and could find no calculation. There was simply a young woman who had decided his son was worth her time, without any return offered or expected. "He talks about you at home," Griffin said. "He didn't talk much after his mother died. The house was very quiet." He paused, and the pause carried something heavy and honest. "He told Mrs. Orville last week that he has someone in his corner. Those were his exact words. 4 years old." Lark looked down for a moment. When she looked back up, her expression was careful and warm. "He's going to be fine," she said quietly. "More than fine. He thinks in ways most children his age don't yet. He just needs someone to keep watering." Griffin nodded. He looked around the room, the small chairs, the art drying on the line by the window, the worksheet with its soft middle from all that erasing. He thought about his son's face through the glass. He thought about Sloane, who would have walked in here and known immediately that this was a person worth knowing. Sloane had always been faster at that than he was.
"I'd like to support your classroom," he said. "Formally. Whatever you need. Supplies, books, equipment. I have a foundation for educational initiatives. I want to direct funding here." Lark looked at him steadily. "I appreciate that," she said. "The classroom could use quite a lot, honestly. But—" she paused. "The most valuable thing you can do for Beckett isn't funding. It's showing up like you did yesterday. He watched you pull in through the window. He didn't say anything, but he stood up a little straighter." Griffin went very still. "He saw me." "He sees everything," she said. "He has his mother's eyes." The room was quiet. Outside, the first sounds of arriving children floated in from the hallway. The morning had begun its gentle, unstoppable momentum, and neither of them moved to end the conversation yet. Griffin Vane, who had spent 18 months holding everything together through the sheer force of forward motion, stood in a small classroom on Fenwick Road and felt something that had been locked for a long time shift quietly and open. "Thank you," he said. And this time, the 2 words carried everything. "Water the tomatoes," she said softly. "That's all any of us can do." He smiled. Slow, real, the kind that doesn't perform. And he went to find his son. Lark went back to her plant on the windowsill, thinking about a boy with serious eyes who had told her the numbers wouldn't stay still, and about how showing up quietly and consistently, without applause or calculation, was the only kind of kindness that truly changes anything. Some people move mountains. Some people just stay late, sit beside a child, and water what's trying to grow. Both matter, but only one of them happens every day. in every ordinary room, by the people who have chosen to believe that every child is worth it. That belief is the whole thing. That belief is everything. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, subscribe, and comment. Let's spread more stories of kindness and hope together.